Now back to the grim news of the British hostage. Within the past half hour, Gordon Brown has condemned the murder of a Briton who was kidnapped in Mali 4 months ago. The group holding Edwin Dyer had been demanding the release of the radical cleric Abu Qatada, who's currently fighting efforts to extradite him to Jordan, where he's been convicted of terrorism charges. In a statement, the Prime Minister said, "We have strong reason to believe that a British citizen, Edwin Dyer, has been murdered by an al-Qaeda cell in Mali." The Prime Minister goes on, "I utterly condemn this appalling and barbaric act of terrorism. This tragedy reinforces our commitment to confront terrorism. It strengthens our determination never to concede to the demands of terrorists nor to pay ransoms." Well, we've also had a statement from the Foreign Secretary in the last few moments along the same lines, and we can talk now to our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. Frank, it's a very grim morning and a surprise to many of us who really didn't know much about this case.
Yes, I mean, it's the sad conclusion to 4 months of quite tortuous negotiations in some cases, or attempts to get him freed. I've been monitoring this story since January the 22nd, when Edwin Dyer was kidnapped along with a number of European tourists and Canadian diplomats. And they were close to Timbuktu. They were on the Mali-Niger border. They were grabbed probably just by ordinary bandits initially, but who sold them on to al-Qaeda. And 4 of the others were released for ransoms, reportedly of multi-million-dollar amounts, although I'm sure no government will ever admit to that. And they remained holding Edwin Dyer and a Swiss national. They issued an ultimatum to Britain saying, "Release Abu Qatada or we will execute our hostage." They extended that once, but the deadline ran out on Sunday, and they've announced through a website, a pro-Al-Qaeda website, that they've carried out their threat and murdered him. It's the first time that Al-Qaeda in North Africa has murdered a British hostage.
And Frank, the statements from the Foreign Secretary and from the Prime Minister talk of strenuous efforts to get Edwin Dyer released, and talk of working with the government of Mali. What does that actually mean, strenuous efforts and working with the government of Mali?
Right. Every time a British citizen is kidnapped anywhere in the world, whether it's an oil worker in the delta of Nigeria, whether it's somebody in Iraq, whether it's somebody in the Philippines, wherever, they have immediately a kind of crisis meeting and they designate people to work on this. The Foreign Office has a team, their counter-terrorism department, who handle it, but they work with all agencies of government, whether it's military, signals, intelligence, whatever. And of course, quite rightly, I think that they release almost no information about how this is going. The British government has a long-standing policy of not making substantive concessions to kidnappers. That includes not paying ransoms, whereas the Europeans reportedly do. And what that means is that they will have sent negotiators and people like that to Mali to work with the Malian authorities to say, all right, first of all, where do we think they are? What do we know about who's holding them? How can we contact them? Can we get a proof of life? Let's find out what they want. And they're always trying to keep this out of the news so that there isn't sort of grand posturing with one sort of side making big public demands against the other. And these things are usually just negotiated intermittently in secret. But then eventually when the kidnappers don't get what they want, they then start making grandiose demands. And that's what's happened in this case.
Frank, I know that we will pursue the other questions surrounding all of this later in the morning. For now, thanks very much.